It's neighborhood news and, of course, the 411 with the Fox and 98.7 Kiss Country. Myself, Jay Brooks. There's Harry O to my left, right?
I'm on your right on my screen.
Yeah. Okay. And down below, I've got Sheriff Pals and Mary Ingram. Thank you both for joining us here today.
Thanks for having us.
It's been a while, guys.
It has.
It has.
Well, I know it's been a year for the subject we're about to talk about.
Yeah.
It comes up about this time every single year.
Yeah. And of
we
course,
want to thank, Jay, CG Health.
Yes.
They sponsor this Fox 411 and KISS neighborhood news. And we appreciate them very much. CG Health, which is out at the public or the Plaza West Shopping Center, or cghealth.com.
So we're here to talk. October is a month where, well, you kind of hate to talk about some of these things, but Domestic Awareness Month once again, and
domestic violence, actually.
Domestic Violence Awareness Month, yeah. And I don't know what. Either one of you guys want to start off and just tell us, what is this month about and what kind of activities do you have going on or events?
So October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and Kevin and I are going to keep coming year after year after year until we end domestic violence. So if people are tired of hearing us, listen closely this time. Really, October is a month that we focus on raising awareness. We want to make sure that every single individual in North Iowa knows where to go for help, where to go for assistance, if they are a victim or they know someone. We also have some events happening that I'll let the sheriff talk about.
All
right. This Friday at noon, we have a free lunch for everyone that attends our program. It's called Remember My Name. We're going to have law enforcement and our coalition members there to read the names of Iowa victims since 1995, since we've been keeping track. In Iowa, 375 Iowans have been killed due to domestic violence. And so we're going to read a lot of the local victims and their just a short little scenario about what took place. And then we're going to have some guest speaker, him and his wife, Tom Nichols. He's a retired deputy sheriff out of Blackhawk County, right down Waterloo area. And they had a daughter that was a victim of domestic violence. So it'd be a very powerful story. It's kind of a somber experience to be there. We know that this is a very emotional topic and very personal, but we'd like to invite everybody out. We're going to provide a free lunch, like I said, and we'll have a good time remembering those that have lost their lives to domestic violence, and hopefully get the message out there that we'd like this to stop.
And Sheriff, this is for the state of Iowa, right?
Yeah, the 375 is for the whole state of Iowa, correct.
375 Iowans. You sent us a flyer about a month ago. It said 365. It already updated 10 more just in Iowa.
Yes. Yep.
Wow.
Sheriff, with everything you see that's going on in the mainstream media, they're talking about this and that, and the violence is raising. Is that part of it too? Or is it other things that are?
Well, I'm not sure that we've seen a rise in the domestic violence numbers locally. Ours are pretty stagnant. We saw the rise back in about 1996 when they changed Iowa law that made mandatory arrest by law enforcement if we could prove who the aggressor is. There's no more of this, hey, you go to this room, you go to that room, or you go to here, you go to a friend's house. We're not doing that anymore. Now when we have some probable cause to believe violence have taken place, then we are mandated by Iowa law to make an arrest. So the numbers spiked up in the late 90s, and it's kind of leveled off, through locally and nationwide. But the increase of other violence is not directly related to domestic violence.
Mary, well, we could have a list of reasons why, this stuff just keeps on going on and on and on. It's been around. It's probably never going to stop, unfortunately. But besides addiction, and maybe you can lead off with that, but what do you think is the main reason?
I think, like you said, we could go on and on forever. Yeah. Number one, the basis of domestic violence is power and control. It's someone wanting to exert their power and control over another person.
Mhm.
And what we know is people are going to, people who use abuse in their life are going to use the least amount of effort possible. So if I can control you by just shooting you a look, that's all I'm going to do. But if I have to maybe take your car keys away or control your finances, sometimes that escalates to physical violence. What we see is abuse happens across a continuum. It doesn't typically happen on the first date. So, for example, if you and I went out for dinner tonight and after dinner you punched me in the head, I probably wouldn't go out with you again. I definitely wouldn't go out with you again.
Right.
But what we see is that it happens over a period of time. And what we see is a lot of times people will start by being very controlling, but it looks like love. You know, someone's texting me 17 times a day. What are you doing? Where are you at? All of that. So I think it just because it happens slowly and people can't see it when they're in it. And then it's hard to reach out for help.
Well, go ahead.
Well, I'm kind of curious in what, and Mary or Sheriff, either one of you guys can answer this, but where is the line drawn when it becomes domestic violence? And it doesn't have to be physical, right? It could be just verbally. Where's that line where you go, okay, that is, or is there a gray area in between? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, in Iowa law, anytime you make a threat of physical abuse, it could be a violation. However, the victim's got to cooperate. The mandatory arrest comes with physical evidence.
Okay.
With supported by, corroborated by other means, other witnesses, or the victim's going to cooperate. So the verbal, like, oh man, you're just a piece of garbage. That's not a law violation. It has to be more specific, like I'm going to kill you, or
right.
Something like that.
Yeah.
That crosses the line.
Okay.
And at our agency, we don't have to have probable cause. We don't have to follow the Iowa code. All we have to do is to believe people. Our threshold is quite a bit lower than law enforcement. And it's not unusual for someone to call us and say, hey, I don't know if this is abusive or not. And typically if you're wondering if something about the relationship is off, it's probably off. And it's probably been off for a while. And we really define it as anything that makes you feel uncomfortable. People should be feeling safe and comfortable in a relationship. That doesn't necessarily, everyone defines abuse differently, but if you feel uncomfortable in a relationship, you deserve to have a better relationship. You deserve to feel safe and healthy in a relationship.
Well, and I think, Mary, that's part of that control too, where I think there could be anybody watching this, if any women are watching, if any men are watching and getting physically abused from their spouse, whatever. But I think it's the fact they feel trapped. They don't know how to get themselves out of this whole thing. And first of all, take a big, deep breath and call Crisis Intervention Service. It's scrolling on our screen right now for you listening, 800-479-9071. So, right, Mary, it's just they feel trapped. I mean, and
Absolutely.
you've got to get out of that mode.
And the other thing is, we really want to encourage family, friends, coworkers. If you suspect someone is in an abusive relationship, let them know that help is available.
Yep.
They might not be ready for that help today, but they might use that information next week or 2 weeks down the road. It's important that the whole community work together on this problem, because I think 20 years ago, society looked at domestic violence as a women's issue. Today, we know that 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men will be victims of domestic violence in their lifetime.
Wow.
This isn't a woman's issue. This is a community issue. This is a public health issue. And this is something that the whole community has to work together to end.
Something that blows my mind is when you hear about relationships that are abusive or things like that, but then you hear people, they split up, but they some reason still get back together with that same person that's been abusive. Why do they do that? There's a whole.
We're gonna have to talk for 3 more days. But
that's what I
Based
think.
on fear, it really is.
A big part of it is fear. And I think 20 years ago, I would have talked about it, love. And I think that has something to do with it. If there's kids involved,
Yeah.
I think there's this belief that, oh, they're a really good parent. Maybe they're not the best partner, but I want my child to have a good father or a good mother. One of the biggest factors where we see victims returning to someone that's been abusive comes down to money. It comes down to finances and not being able to afford to live on their own.
Is there
It's a huge barrier, and it's hard to overcome for many people.
is there any type of financial assistance people could get with that or not?
We can provide financial assistance, but almost every program that can help people with financial assistance is more of a Band-Aid or a bridge. I like to look at it as a bridge. We can help for 2 to 3 months, but we can't help forever. So depending on people's individual circumstances, it might be difficult.
Sheriff, is it pretty common to think that domestic violence is the #1 crime in the area? Out of all the calls you guys do?
Yeah, it's not #1.
Oh, it's not. Okay.
No.
I thought it would be way up there because domestic violence, domestic disputes.
Yeah.
You guys
Well,
called on that all the time.
it's about in the middle of the category.
Okay.
I believe from a law enforcement standpoint that I believe addiction is probably one of the leading factors to some of that. However, the personality traits of some people, being in families where domestic violence occurred growing up, I think has a huge impact on how we treat each other, because it's kind of a learned behavior. And that's why when you contact crisis or friends and family contact crisis, there's some education that people can get to help themselves change. And so everyone convicted of domestic abuse has to take an Iowa certified class through adult probation and parole. There's anger classes they can take. There's domestic violence education classes. I can't think of the name of the Iowa program right now, Mary, because it switched a couple years ago and I don't have the handle on that. But, there is help for people that know they have a problem. And unfortunately, some of these abusers just don't catch on right away.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it takes a few times, right, Mary?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And when the sheriff talked about, the generational cycle, I don't want to necessarily speak to the sheriff's age, but I've been doing this work long enough that I'm starting to see third generation. We're starting to see, we see little boys and little girls that we helped, their parents when they were 3 and 4 now in the same situation, or we see their mugshots on the sheriff's page. And that's one of the frustrating things is that we keep doing our best to try and end the cycle of abuse. And we can't quite get ahead of the curve. But the flip side of it is every day we're helping individuals and families. There's a lot of people out there that need help.
Well, and I believe everything starts from home. That's exactly where it is. Where it's like this, or with what sheriff deals with on a regular basis too, as far as respect for each other and following the law.
Absolutely.
You guys want to maybe bring up the North Iowa Domestic and Sexual Abuse Community Coalition and what that's all about? And I mean, that's one thing that we're doing right here. I realize that. But this event that's happening here, well, I don't know when you're watching this or listening to this, but it's tomorrow, Friday, October 7th, noon to 1, Mason City Public Library, Mason City Room. It's sponsored by the North Iowa Domestic and Sexual Abuse Community Coalition. There's, it's a group coming together.
Sure. And when the sheriff and I started in our professions, it seemed like we were all working in our own little silos. We did our thing, the sheriff did their thing. And several years ago, we realized we have to work together to solve a problem like domestic violence or sexual assault. So the coalition is comprised of individuals from law enforcement, the criminal justice system, medical providers, school, just normal everyday people that want to help. And we come together once a month to just make sure we all are on the same page, know what other people are doing, talk about emerging issues and trends, and work together to hold offenders accountable and make sure victims are safe in our community. One other thing we're doing this month, every Wednesday, we will have staff out at the NIAC in the cafeteria over the lunch hour to just provide information to college students. We know that the ages of 14 to 24, people are at the most risk for being in an abusive relationship. It's when people start to date and start to figure out healthy and unhealthy relationships. So we want to be there to make sure people know what looks good in a relationship.
Right. You know, go ahead, Jay.
No, I'm just going to talk about the number. Go ahead.
I was going to suggest kind of a tip for you guys. I mean, we're doing our thing. This is our part, and there's other medias involved that do their part. I mean, let's face it. I think the best we can do is to make sure the word is out there, right? That, and they need easy access and quick access and all that. I'm going to suggest a QR code to go on to. I mean, I'm talking the bills, our utility bill that we get. Put something a little bit on there about, the crisis intervention. Or even the sheriff's department or whatever. I'm talking even simple things like magnets that you can put on a refrigerator. QR codes. I mean, this is what people 40 years old and younger understand very easily. I mean, it took us a while to get used to it, but we're used to that. And people, all they have to do is put their phone up there to it, and voila, boom, they're connected. And I think that's probably the biggest. That's why we're here to help you guys out. Is trying to get connected with the people out there that really need our help, and they need easy access to some of this stuff. So, just a suggestion: a QR code might do some of that stuff. And Sheriff, you could even do it for Crime Stoppers, for that matter, too. Get a QR code.
It's a good idea.
I mean, and I know that budgets are always tight, but just to be able to have that awareness out there that all people have to do is have easy access. I mean, I don't care if it's posters on every telephone pole out there, or anything like that. Put them up everywhere so all people have to do is have that access.
Great idea.
Yeah. Well, if you've got questions or anything, you can call the Crisis Intervention Service at 1-800-479-9071. If you're watching the video, of course, it's scrolling across the bottom. But anything else to ask, Harry?
I think we're right there. It's Remember My Name tomorrow or Friday, depending on when you're hearing this or seeing it. Noon to 1, Mason City Public Library in the Mason City room, by the way. So it's a free lunch provided at noon. Program starts right after that. So
Fox 411. Yeah. Fox 411. And the Kiss Country Neighborhood News, all brought to you by CG Public Health, cghealth.com. Sheriff Pals, I almost called you Sheriff Ingram.
Oh, there we go.
Get me someday.
We should switch for the day.
Yeah, there you go.
Sheriff Ingham and Deputy Pals.
Let's do that on April Fool's Day. That'd be kind of fun when we come around.
Yeah, that would be good.
Because I want to say we talk in April, too.
Yes, we do.
See, I remember.
It could happen.
Man, we've been doing this too long. Always a pleasure to have you guys.
Yeah, well, thanks again for
having me. Thank you.
All right, sounds good.